Hello friends, today I want to discuss with you an important principle that has made humanity what it is today, and that is the principle of working hard. And it happened that this principle is also a biblical principle, and anyone, any religious leader, any person who claims to be a faithful religious leader who is not telling people that working hard is a biblical principle is misleading them. Why am I saying this? It's just because of what I see now in the religious world. You know, a few weeks ago, a friend of mine called me and invited me to a religious gathering where a woman of God will be preaching, and praying for people to be healed and be better off, including being better off financially. I told him that I didn't have time to go, but that even if I had time, I wouldn't have gone if that was the main reason for that gathering. A few months back, I have heard another friend who invited me to a conference where a speaker could or will play for participants to be rich. While traveling across the world, I always see how religion can keep many people in poverty, especially when religious leaders are often telling people that as long as they pay money and offerings, that they will receive miracles and that they will be better off. So that's the reason why I chose today this topic. What does the Bible say about working hard? So we will explore this crucial biblical principle that has often been overshadowed by the hope for miracles, and this is the principle of working diligently. The scripture is clear that while God is a God of miracles, He calls us to work hard and live responsibly. From the creation of Adam to the 10 Commandments and throughout the Bible, we see a consistent emphasis on human responsibility to work. So it's clear that we must work. The 10 Commandments and the work-rest balance is explained in Exodus 20 verse 9. God commanded, 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. Here, the divine instruction is clear. We are to dedicate 6 out of 7 days to work. This commandment is part of the foundational law given by God, showing that work is integral to a life of obedience to Him. So that means 1/7 of our time is set aside for rest and worship, but the vast majority is committed to labor. This reveals that work is not a punishment, but a blessing from God, an opportunity to glorify Him through the gifts and abilities He has given us. From the very beginning, work has been central to God's design for humanity. In Genesis chapter 2 verse 15, God placed Adam in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. Before sin even entered in the world, Adam was entrusted with meaningful labor, cultivating the earth, managing its resources, and ensuring that it grows. This shows us that work is part of our divine calling, not a burden we bear because of sin. No, It is an act of stewardship, reflecting God's creative power. So anyone tells you otherwise is exploiting you. The Bible continually reinforces the idea of personal responsibility in work. For example, Thessalonians chapter 3 verse 10, Paul writes, "For even when we were with you, we gave you this rule," and it's a rule, "the one who is unwilling to work shall not eat." This is a powerful reminder that we must not expect to live off the labor of others, all through miraculous means alone. God provides for us, but often His provisions comes through the work of our own hands. So, as I mentioned, throughout the scripture, we see that the great men and women in the Bible were diligent workers. Let's see some. Consider Joseph, for example, who, despite being sold into slavery, worked diligently in Potiphar's house and in prison, eventually rising to become second in command in Egypt, a foreign land. We see that in Genesis 39 up to 41. Ruth, who labored in the fields to provide for herself, and Naomi, leading to her being noticed by Boaz. And also, if we look at Paul, who, despite being a great apostle, made tents to support his ministry. We see that in Acts 18 verse 3. So all these were working hard. None of these men became successful or prosperous by waiting for a miracle. None of any of those women did. They trusted in God, but they also worked hard and took initiative. So why do people tell people to sit and wait? In our current context, especially in places like Africa, we see many believers being taught to expect miracles for their daily provision without an emphasis on work. Entire congregations are led to believe that prosperity will come through divine intervention alone, rather than through diligent and work hard. Preachers often promise financial breakthroughs, job promotions, and wealth through prayer and sowing seeds, which is a term for giving money to the church so that you can be blessed, while neglecting to teach the biblical principle of working hard. I have seen many religious leaders who exploit the desperation of poor believers by asking for tithe and offerings in exchange for promises of miracles. These leaders often claim that giving money to the church will unlock God's blessings. While tithing and giving are biblical, they are not meant to be transactional. No, in fact, Jesus warned against this kind of exploitation. In Matthew 23:14, he condemned religious leaders who devour widows' houses and take advantage of the poor. This is what these leaders are doing now. Sadly, this prosperity gospel message has left many believers impoverished, still waiting for a financial breakthrough that never comes. Africa, a continent with millions of faithful believers, remains plagued by poverty, in part because people are being taught to wait for miracles rather than being encouraged to work and use their God-given talents. Miracles have their places, but work is the norm. God is a miracle-working God, yes, and He does intervene in miraculous way, that's true. However, the Bible teaches that miracles are exceptions, not the rule. Even in the story of Lazarus, resurrection was not done until work was done. In other words, Jesus instructed the people present to roll away the stone. John 11:39, they could not raise Lazarus, but they could move the stone. This is a profound lesson. God will not do for us what we can do for ourselves. Never. We are called to work hard, trusting God for what is beyond our ability. So, my friends, the Bible clearly teaches that work is a form of worship and a responsibility. God has called us to be good stewards of the ability and opportunities He's given us. While miracles are real and can happen, they are not meant to replace hard work and diligence. As Paul wrote, "The one who is unwilling to work shall not eat." Simple. This is a divine principle. We are called to balance faith and works. Faith trusts God for the outcome, but our work shows that we are doing our part. God will bless the work of our own hands, but we must first put our hands to the plow. Let us not fall into the trap of waiting for miraculous prosperity while neglecting the work God has called us to do. Instead, may we be committed to working diligently and trusting that God will provide for us as we do so. God can never do for you what you are able to do for yourself. Just as the people could roll away the stone, we too must do our part and leave the rest to God Himself. Otherwise,